the infamous, the underground, the illegal Roto Hackers podcast. We're your unauthorized source of fantasy shenanigans. And I'm joined here with AJ Herschel, the kid. Remember, I used to always get that wrong, and now I don't. And
we just change the intro every week instead.
And also joined by it's Jared. Oh, my falsetto was terrible on that.
I like it.
Jared and AJ, how are you guys doing today? And more importantly, because I don't care about your day. No, I'm just kidding. I do care about your day. But to get right to it, how was your week one?
Fantastic. I've got 17 teams. I went 13-4.
Whoa.
Had a lot of guys. Yeah, had a lot of guys do well. Won some rivalry games. Had to educate some folks on fantasy football who thought they knew what they were doing, and I just had to come in and be like, no, you do not know what you're doing. I will teach you, young Padawan.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. In the week one madness. Yeah, sure. We'll see. What about you, AJ? How was it?
Well, I have nowhere near as many as 17 teams. No. But out of the 7 total I'm in, and one is a co-manager, I went 4-3 and 4-2 in my personal ones. So I count that as a win, even though in one league, with the league I'm co-managing, the other team put up 200 points on us.
I had a little bit of that action.
That was, let's just say that was less than optimal. But other than that, solid week. Could have been better, but it could have been much worse.
Okay, well, I went out of my 15 leagues, I think I went 7-8 or 6-9, something like that. Not too good, but my bench blew up, so it's encouraging. I still have some hope for the future. Also, I didn't have very much of Mahomes, and I think his injury is worse than he's letting on. And I didn't have. I'm worried about Juju, but we'll get into it. What is? I just need 2 major takeaways, maybe one surprise and one thing that you're happy about from week one. We'll start with you, AJ.
Oh boy, one thing I am happy about is that Sammy Watkins is now the number 1 in Kansas City, and I took him in a whole bunch of places. Very, very happy about that. That was very encouraging for my teams. Probably the one thing I was the most surprised by was just kind of the explosion from a lot of teams that I just did not expect. I was not thinking Oakland was going to have a crazy game with what's his name, Josh Jacobs. I totally did not think Tennessee was going to put up 43 points. I mean, Baltimore, Miami's defense is horrible, but still, it was just the surprising thing was just the amount of players that were considered second tier just putting up insanely big numbers. That's probably the biggest surprise for me.
Second tier, huh? All right, maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. What about you, Jared?
Biggest surprise would be seeing how much tight ends balled out in week one. Kelsey got his numbers. Ertz and Kittle were solid. OJ Howard didn't really do that much. Henry was solid. And then we just had a bunch of guys that you could have gotten in later rounds that just went nuts. Like Evan Ingram, I've got a good bit of stock in him. I thought he was going to have a good year. But then guys like, second year guy, Mark Andrews for the Ravens. He's a guy that I knew he was going to, I was waiting for it, but I just didn't have roster spots for him. And I wasn't confident enough to put him on over certain other guys, but he blew up. TJ Hawkinson, the rookie for the Lions, he had a huge game. Delaney Walker had a couple of touchdowns in Tennessee. Waller, the guy in Oakland. Austin Hooper ended up with a pretty solid line for the Falcons. And so, not all of these guys are going to be consistent week to week. But, I think now, if you took Travis Kelce or maybe Kittle, there's no reason to regret doing that. But, Zach Ertz, he didn't do much till the second half. And I feel like him and a couple of these other guys that were going like top 5 or 6 tight ends may end up not really being that much of a value compared to some of these guys that you could have gotten off the waiver wire the last round or something. I think what I'm happy about is just a lot of the guys that I thought were going to do well did well. Chris Carson, Judah was just dogging Chris Carson.
He did okay. He got 2 touchdowns. That was good.
He had over 20 points.
He had like 21 point something points.
He was all right.
So I had him in several leagues. I had Josh Jacobs in several leagues. I had Marlon Mack in several leagues.
Marlon Mack balled out, man.
He did. I worry a little bit more about him just because he's just not a factor in the passing game the way some of these other guys are. So he's a little bit game script dependent. But really good. And Dak, I started Dak in like half a dozen leagues because I thought he was going to do well, and he did. So I honestly, most of my games, like the four that I lost by a good bit. There was really nothing I could have done differently that would have pulled it out. And then with the exception of like one league, like 11 or 12 of my wins, the score was like 150 to 95 or something. They were comfortable. So I made the right plays this week. So hopefully I can keep it going.
Nice. Good job. Yeah. I think a big surprise for me was defenses. I was hoping a few defenses would be a lot better. That we didn't see. It's other than the Ravens, didn't really see a huge defensive turnout. Thursday nights both teams had really good defense turnouts, but the Ravens you can't really count because they played like a CFL league. So
yeah,
the Titans did well.
The Titans, that's true. The Titans. Oh, and Minnesota did pretty well too.
Oh yeah,
but that was kind of a weird game. I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting Philadelphia. I was expecting the Lions. Some of these other teams to do a lot better. So the biggest excitement. Oh man, Monday night's game. The Saints and the
Texans.
Man, was that a good game? If that is indicative of more football to come, I'm really excited for the year because and it helped me be a little bit more excited because the games Sunday actually weren't very there was I don't know, definitely weren't as exciting as the one Monday night both Monday night. I know a lot of people didn't like the second game, but I thought they were both pretty exciting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. As far as news goes, there's not much news. I don't really want to cover this more crap with
Antonio Brown.
It's
the Michael Scott meme. The no, God, please
no. Yeah,
that was my first reaction to it.
It's just more stuff, and really, it's garbage. There's nothing really substantial. It's just more drama, and it's just going to drag on. But there was something. There are some notable injuries. I brought them up a little bit at the beginning. So, like some of them that came out later. What's his name? Funchess is out for the year with a clavicle?
Well,
or
half
something
the year. He's going on IR.
to return?
He'll come back after 8 games, but yeah, I mean, I think a couple of the more significant ones are like Tyreek Hill.
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill's
Yeah.
gonna miss at least a few weeks, maybe more. It looks like right now they're saying 3 weeks, but I
No.
guess they had thought about putting him on IR. So I mean, that tells me that it might be more like 5 or
I think it's going to be a
6.
while. I think he's out for a while.
Yeah. So he was, I guess, really probably the big one.
Well, and Nick Foles going out.
Yeah.
Nick Foles. I mean, it affects a couple like Dede, if you had Dede, but I mean, how many people? And if you're in a deep league, you were starting Foles maybe, but but in terms of like significant injuries to the players, he was a big one too. But then you had a couple of guys like Joe Mixon tweaked his ankle, so he might miss this week's game. It sounds like he'll probably be able to go, but you might get a week of Giovanni Bernard, and then
they are going to rest him. I hope they're going to rest him. This is kind of a common reoccurrence with Joe Mixon, is that he'll tweak a little something. He'll say, "I'll come back next week," and he doesn't. It's kind of normal for him. Luckily, I didn't take him very much this year. Then also a couple little tweaks. Of course, I mentioned Mahomes, Juju, and Williams.
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams. All had little tweaks. Looks like they're going to play, but the one that worries me the most is Juju. I don't like toes.
No.
For guys who need to jump up for the ball, and run and cut. That bothers me, especially since the weight of the whole team. There was no one else. Now, part of this was the play calling, but there was just nobody helping him against the Patriots. I mean, it was just so easy for the Patriots to just shut Juju down. We really don't respect anything else, and they made the right call.
Well, I said, I think in Saturdays, I don't know if it was Saturdays or last Tuesdays, that I had a fair amount of stock in Juju and James Conner. And I'm like, they're going to suck in week 1 because the Patriots do 2 things. They shut down your run and they take away your best receiver. And so that was true, before, but especially with this team. And so the toe does worry me a little bit, and it's aggravating because, there was absolutely no reason for them to be in the game. They're down 33 to 3. Mike Tomlin kicked that field goal in the first half because he just didn't want to get shut out. And so then he was still trying to play to score. And I actually kind of like the fact that Belichick went back and played prevent defense, because it's like, all right, if you're going to do that, okay, we'll really defend you. There was no reason. Just run the ball, put your backups in, run the score out. And so, the toe thing with Juju does worry me a little bit. I'm hoping it's not much, but I'm like buying low. I'm buying low on Juju and Connor wherever I can. I traded Gurley straight up for Connor in one league because a guy I think he offered that to me.
You traded Gurley for Connor?
Yeah. Wow. Gurley, I mean, Connor was traditionally going around 7, 8 in the draft. I mean, maybe like in some rounds he'd slip the second round. Gurley, who before the season was going second to third round.
I think that was a mistake.
And then he split his carries with Malcolm Brown, and he didn't get any goal line carries.
Yeah, but with the carries he had, he was excellent. And the team had talked about doing that. They said in games where they don't need him, they're not going to use him much, and they didn't need him. But
they didn't know that at the beginning. They were giving him
he was playing at the beginning.
But not at goal line carries, Malcolm Brown was coming in. So what is that going to change? Maybe
I think it'll change next week when they play against who they play.
The Saints.
That's going to change big time. He's going to have a huge game next week. I guarantee you.
We'll see. I mean, James Conner, uncontested back, had a great season last season. I mean, honestly, I just don't take much of anything away from that game because the Pittsburgh is always terrible in New England. It doesn't matter. Like even when they had Antonio Brown. So I'll take the risk on Conner. I'll take Gurley for Conner straight up.
Well, that's a bold move. We'll see how it goes.
I don't know if it's that bold. I mean, just like look at everybody's rankings and especially after that first game, people are more spooked than ever on Gurley. So we'll see if it ends up coming back. I've still got Gurley in 2 leagues. If it ends up coming back, I've got some stock in him, but
then the what's his name? The Mahomes injury. That was worrisome. I didn't like that he played on it so much after he got, I mean, maybe it was just a normal little sprain, but then they were whacking the stuffing out, out of, who'd they play? Oh, out of Jacksonville, right? Did they play?
Yeah, they were playing Jacksonville. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't need to, I don't know. They could have done it easily with a backup, I felt. But I don't know. It just worries me for him. It just seems too perfect, that he would of course get it, get an injury. The rest of the season he's kind of hobbled around, pulls a Aaron Rodgers. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have stock in him, so I'm not too worried.
Well, I don't either, but I just love him I just love watching him. Okay, so let's go back around the horn here and more takeaways from week 1. Important things. Let's say, how about this? Players that you think are frauds. They did excellent in week 1, but you're not buying it. Start with you, J-Rod.
Well, some of these guys are not going to be, I wouldn't say are complete frauds, but okay. So, I'll go with the guys who probably are like quote unquote like fool's gold, and it's going to be a lot of these like young wide receivers that had a huge game in week 1 on some big bomb plays. Hollywood Brown for the Ravens is going to be a big pickup, but he played like a small percentage of their snaps.
He had 7 snaps, I think.
Yeah, something small. Yeah, and he's not going to. They're not playing the Dolphins every week. He's not going to be able to, just burn defenses all week. And similar a little bit. A lot of these little kind of smallish wide receivers that did that, like Deshaun Jackson. He got a lot of targets in Philadelphia. So that's a little more encouraging. It wasn't just like 4 or 5 balls. He actually got 10 targets. So that's actually pretty good. But, I was looking at him and, it's just been, he doesn't get you more than usually like half a dozen touchdowns in a season. He doesn't catch that many balls. He's not a, possession wide receiver. He's a deep threat. So I think people are going to overspend on him. And then, John Ross, the guy for the Bengals, AJ Green, who knows when AJ Green's going to come back? Is he going to be out a month or what? But as soon as he comes back, you're going to have Boyd, Green, Ross, it's hard to see Ross getting the target. So like if you've got a lower waiver priority or something, sure, it's probably worth using on him, but otherwise, you're just much better off. And so I'll throw in one last guy and say, to a certain extent, like T.Y. Hilton is not going to do what he did in week 1 either. He had, I think, 80 something yards, 2 touchdowns. His ceiling for touchdowns in a season is 7, and normally it's like 5 or 6. So, people like he really fell down draft boards because, once Luck retired. Yeah. But it's not going to be some magic connection with Jacoby Brissett. It's T.Y. will put up his, he's like 5'9" and $170. So, I'd say just a lot of these receivers are not guys. The small burners are just not ones that you can count on week to week.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. What about you, AJ?
Well, you kind of stole my John Ross one, but I'm actually
Sorry.
a little bit for a different reason, actually, though. Not so much the fact that when AJ comes back and be more mouths to feed, but more because of the fact that I don't trust John Ross with his injury history of just ankle problems dating back to college and in the combine. And last year, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I don't trust him as a consistent person that I'll be able to start every week knowing that, he's actually going to be healthy. So I don't trust him as well, just for a different reason. And then the other guy, who I had no idea was going to happen, but Philip Dorsett, for some reason, put up over 20 points last week.
That's right.
Which is absolutely crazy, but I don't know if I'm going to trust that from him, because I just feel like eventually the Patriots offense is going to get so spread out that I don't think he's ever going to get that kind of those kind of high points again. I can see him getting a touchdown every few games or whatever, but with Gordon still there, with Edelman still there, whatever Antonio Brown is doing, if he shows up or not, if he's there, and then you still have Sony Michel, and then you still have James White coming out of the backfield. So I just don't trust him in the Patriots offense. And if he's going to be I don't think he's going to be consistent at all. And if he does, it will genuinely surprise me.
I think that's pretty good, especially since Dorsett is basically a T.Y. Hilton clone as far as his build and his pedigree. I remember when the Colts drafted Dorsett. Yeah, everybody's like, "Why? You already have the exact same guy."
It was awful. It was awful.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's like there's they basically had like wet paper towels for offensive linemen for Andrew Luck, and then we're gonna take Philip Dorsett, so and then here we are a few years later, and Andrew Luck is now out of the league because of injuries. So yeah, good call on that, Ryan Grigson.
Well, and I agree with what you guys are saying. Basically, these are straight line speedsters that are getting the deep ball. Another one, did you mention what's his name? Ted Ginn? No,
but he's
another one. Ted Ginn. A lot of these speedsters, look, they do get good fantasy production. A lot of weeks, but it's just hard to tell which week it's going to be.
Some weeks. Yeah. Maybe a third. A third would be some. But I mean, if 2/3 of the time they're not getting, then it's
boom or bust. Yeah. You're getting big weeks when you get it. But,
you are. Yeah.
Okay. For me, I would say, I hadn't even thought about it yet. Probably should. Well, I think Watkins actually is going to be somebody who's a bit, I wouldn't say total fraud, but somebody who it's going to be hard to replicate what he did. Look, the guy balled out, and he has skill coming out, all his pores, but he is, I think once the defense turns towards him as the X, sees him as, because there's not, although I do want to talk about maybe a little bit on the waiver wire, Mecole Hardman. There's not going to be, he's going to be, him and Kelsey are going to be the targets, and shutting them down is going to be easier than shutting down another. See the difference between these little speedsters that you guys are talking about and someone like Tyreek is route running. These little guys, they just run straight, go as fast as you can. We'll hit you as soon as you get. But Tyreek would get the separation through his route running and juking,
or catch the ball near the line of scrimmage and take it. Yeah, AJ. I don't know if you saw his message. He said he was going to have to go. He didn't want to, I guess, interrupt, but he put it in the chat or whatever.
You got to go, AJ?
Not yet.
Okay.
Remember that. That was
Yeah. So Tyreek can catch the ball at the line of scrimmage and run after the catch. So yeah, it's like you don't see that as much with these other little guys.
And Watkins will be able to get separation, but not in the same way. And I mean, you talk about injury. Like, how long is his put together? His ankles basically put together with like silly string and tacks. I don't know, but so AJ, before you go, we need to hear some waiver wire. Who are you targeting on the waiver wire so I can vulture you?
Yes. It's really always curious just at the beginning of the season, because to me, week 1 is almost like week 0, kind of, because anything can happen. Any team can come out of nowhere, and it's always just going to be very, very different. It's really hard to tell at the beginning of the year. I think that Justin Jackson eventually, since Melvin Gordon is basically gone, I think Justin Jackson could be someone that the Chargers are going to eventually use a lot more in their offense. And while he hasn't necessarily been spectacular by any means, he's been a solid player for the Chargers when he's played in games. He's done well. So I feel like if he continues that production, the Chargers are going to use him more and more in their lineup. That's kind of the guy that I'm targeting that's farther down the waiver wire that you wouldn't really notice with all the number 1 pickups going on. And then also I'm kind of looking at Michael Gallup a little bit, even though I don't necessarily am not sure about how the Cowboys offense is going to look. To me, he's definitely the number 2 wide receiver. And after Dak Prescott's showing last week, I trust him a lot more than a lot of the other wide receivers out there.
Yep.
I'd agree. I think Gallup is owned a little bit more than some of these other guys. Definitely Jackson's interesting because I don't know. I feel weird because couldn't Melvin Gordon show up tomorrow?
He could. The theory right now is that he will show up for like the last 6 to 8 games because he's got to do it in order to accrue a free agency season.
Right. But on the flip side, like staying out, what does that help him?
Well, it doesn't really, but we saw Le'Veon Bell do it last year because the theory was I won't take any damage to my body and I'll get a bigger contract in the offseason. That ended up not being true. Le'Veon Bell basically basically didn't make up for the money that he lost last year. So hopefully Melvin Gordon learned something from that, but we'll see.
It just seems to me like if he came back, makes nice, like staying out. I just don't know.
And Eckler, look what Eckler, the tough thing for him is like his case is I'm just invaluable. I'm irreplaceable. And Austin Eckler put up 3 touchdowns and I don't remember how many yards, but he was a good receiving back, good running back. And they mixed Justin Jackson in the same way that they mixed Eckler in with Gordon. Yeah. But, running games, it's just a good running back does make a difference. But if you've got a good, scheme and you've got a good, passing game to spread the field, a lot of those guys are, closer to interchangeable than they are to irreplaceable.
Yeah. And Eckler didn't do anything too special. You watch the tape, he just ran through gaping holes, in space. He got, he had some good catches, but all in all, I mean, the offensive line really is what's really clicking in for the Chargers right now, which is good, I think, for Jackson and Eckler. I wouldn't be surprised if Jackson gets more involved. Like maybe next game, Eckler's quiet and Jackson is the main go-to. Because who they played the Colts, right?
The Colts,
The Colts are renowned for being vulnerable to pass catching backs.
Yeah. Well, and they get the Lions next. And so, David Johnson put up, he didn't rush for a ton of yards, but he had, 55 or so rushing, I think, and 55 or so receiving. So so Austin Eckler is kind of like, David Johnson light. So he could put up a similar game, I think, next week.
Yeah.
Interesting. How much do you guys believe in Hawkinson?
I do. I'm going in on him just because Detroit loves to throw the ball. Detroit loves to throw the ball, and I think just Matthew Stafford, not that he was ever super elite, but since he lost Calvin Johnson, he hasn't quite been the same. And so Golden Tate's gone. They had Tate there last year. He's gone. When Anquan Bolden was there, he liked to throw over the middle to Anquan Bolden. So I'm believing. I actually like Hawkinson in most of my leagues. For my waiver pickup, I'm going to try to get one of those two tight ends, probably Andrews or Hawkinson, because I think they're both legit. Even though we just recently talked about like rookie tight ends and how they don't normally work out or whatever, but Hawkinson was a top 10 pick. Stafford loves to throw over the middle. He was in on I think every almost every snap, and so I like him. I like him a lot.
Yeah, it's also hard to ignore the fact when he gets 9 targets on the Lions offense in the first game. That's hard to ignore.
He led the team, right?
I believe so, if I remember right.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Stafford loves those big guys, those tall guys, and he's a good route runner. He's a great catcher. Yeah, I think you're right. He's got great hands. Okay, so AJ, before you go,
yes,
one last waiver wire pickup.
Okay, one last waiver wire pickup. I'm gonna have to think about this.
If you gotta go, let me give you 2 to choose between.
Okay,
Ronald Jones or Brown, the backup at the Rams backup. What's his name? Something
Malcolm Brown.
Malcolm Brown or Ronald Jones.
See the problem. Oh my gosh. See, I would rather take Malcolm Brown simply because he's in the Rams offense, and I trust their offense so much more than I do Tampa Bay right now. I mean, Tampa Bay was probably fine in the opener, but the Rams, I feel like, would be able to use him a lot more efficiently than Tampa's going to use Ronald Jones.
All right. I see you nodding your head, Jared. I totally agree. I mean, I totally disagree.
Oh, you totally disagree.
Okay.
I totally disagree. I think Ronald Jones showed some I'd say higher skill levels than Brown has. And I think Brown, eventually, what's his name? The other rookie's going to get, not the other rookie, the rookie who's so highly touted out of college. What was his name for the Rams?
Henderson.
Henderson's going to start getting touches. Who knows when they're going to use their high-powered, awesome running back named Gurley.
Yeah.
I just don't think I think someone like Ronald Jones could take over. I think that Tampa Bay is going to be way better than that first game. I think that was a fluke. I really do.
I just don't trust Tampa Bay running backs. I think it started with Doug Martin, who was the most inconsistent player I've ever had for 3 years. And then I just haven't. The only Tampa running back I ever trusted was Jaquiz Rogers, but he only lasted 4 weeks out of the year. So I just don't have I never have a good feeling about Tampa.
All right. Fair enough. Okay. Do you got to go?
Yes, I got to go.
All right. Well, we're going to probably wrap up too. We just mentioned a couple more and we got to go. I got to go too. Cool. So thanks for joining us, buddy. We'll see you next. See you on Saturday.
Adios.
Or actually, I don't know if it'll be Saturday, but so you're not a Ronald Jones believer, huh?
No, kind of the same thing. I don't know. It's hard for me to see much out of that Tampa running game. I guess the real question with Ronald Jones is how good is he at running down the field and getting to the ball before it gets intercepted, before Jameis Winston pass gets intercepted by the defense. If he's 100 out of 100 on that, then he's gonna have he could be a player. But man, Jameis Winston, oh my gosh, Jameis Winston.
But here's the thing: is you saw the worst of him yesterday. That's the worst of him. You're gonna get that. It's not gonna get much worse than that. And it's kind of out of his system for at least a couple of games, I think.
Maybe we'll see. I made the mistake of starting him in a league or so, but it didn't matter. I lost by, it was one of the ones that I lost, and I lost by 20 or so. So even if I'd have had Wentz in there instead or something, I would have still been like 5 points short. But yeah, I don't know. My waiver wire pickups would be, like I said, those tight ends. And then there's a couple other receivers that, they're not as available on on the wire as Hollywood Brown or John Ross or somebody, but you've got one of them, John Brown. He did well, although again, like with Josh Allen's inconsistency, I still have a hard time knowing how consistent Brown's going to be. But Gallup, yeah, like AJ mentioned, I like Gallup. I think if the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys passing attack is going to be there more this year. And so he's, Amari Cooper is going to draw the other team's best cornerback. Gallup's had a great preseason. What if Gallup ends up sort of being what we thought Chris Godwin's going to be? And that's not to say that Chris Godwin's not going to have a good season too, but I could see, Gallup kind of being that surprise number 2 wide receiver. And then one last guy. And I guess maybe that's kind of the theme, is these, for some of the guys I'm targeting is like these sort of number 2 wide receivers. So MVS, Marcus Valdez Scantling, he's available in some leagues. I'm going to try to pick him up. I almost kind of forgot about him because from that Thursday game, he's on the waivers from Thursday all the way over till, tonight. But, Devon, if he's really good, Aaron Rodgers, of course, has shown that, he can support 2, sometimes 3 receivers in his passing attack. And they're probably going to scale that back a little bit and run the ball a little bit more. But I think he can definitely, support MVS.
Yeah, I think 2 guys that in that under that same theme, I think Cobb would be somebody to look at too. Not as good as having Gallup, but if Gallup isn't on the waiver wire, which I think he's pretty highly owned, but you're right, he is on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. I think he's about like 45% owned. I think Cobb is not owned anywhere, and I think he might be a good little arbitrage play. And then I like Mecole Hardman. I know that he didn't get any play. Like, he barely got any snaps. He barely got any touches. He barely got anything, even after
Hill went down.
Went down. But I think he's. I really believe that Hill's going to be out longer. I heard Dr. Cho talking about him. Do you know Dr. Cho? And he was saying he saw what happened, and it looked worse than people are letting on. Just where it was, and like he had to go to the hospital, how near it was to like some pretty important vessels, and that sort of thing. So, we got a comment. Me get wins. Says, should I start Mike Evans like next week? Yeah.
Good. Yeah, you got to roll with one bad game. I mean, unless your other options are like, DeAndre and Julio, then yeah, you start Mike Evans. I mean, even if Jameis Winston keeps having bad games, he'll at least start to connect with those receivers a little bit. So there will still be interceptions, but yeah, Mike Evans is. I've got him in a couple leagues. Intended to have him in more, but it was just one bad game, one off game for him.
Well, and one thing that has been talked about a little bit is that stomach bug that started with Mike, or he was one of the major ones to get the stomach bug. Apparently, about 8 of the players in Tampa had this stomach flu. And Mike in particular, Mike Evans walked off the field really early, just shaking his head, sweating, he looked like his head kind of down, he just looked worn out. And you know how it is with some of these stomach flus, it could just take everything out of you. Yeah.
And that's just take everything out of you when you're sitting around, not when you've got to go, run down the field in helmet and pads against, hundreds of pounds of muscle trying to pulverize you into the turf. So
I can barely go to work after being sick. I can't imagine going to work and being pummeled by 300-pound men.
Yeah.
All right. He also asked who to add: AP, Hyde, or Latavius Murray. Ooh, those guys are on your waiver wire. Now it's interesting because AP to me is an. I've been eyeing AP. Now Hyde, Murray isn't on my waiver wire anywhere. But AP is. You could probably pick him up anywhere. And now, so we didn't talk about Geis he's probably out for a couple of weeks with it's like not even the leg that he had injured before.
Right.
The other one. Geis is out. I mean,
Coleman's out. Tevin Coleman.
Oh yeah, Coleman's out. So who's left?
Well, out of those guys, gosh, I guess for like a season long ad, like if you just needed like who's going to give you the best game next week or something, I would go Adrian Peterson. Even though I don't really have a lot of faith in Adrian Peterson, he's going to start. But for like a season long player, I would say Latavius Murray, just because AP, when Geis comes back, he's going to take a back seat. Hyde, Hyde produced pretty well against the Saints. I mean,
he looked good. He looked real good.
He did. But I don't see that being a consistent thing week to week. And he's not going to get the passing downs. It's going to be all Duke Johnson. So unless you just happen to be in a standard league, even then Hyde's going to be TD dependent. But, Murray, he's not going to get the full Mark Ingram role. But, we saw him getting some of the, work inside the 5 or 10. He broke his run for a touchdown was longer than that. So I think Latavius Murray is the better season-long play or the season-long stash out of all those guys.
Yeah, I would say it's a coin flip between Hyde and Murray. I think AP's could probably be great next week if he starts. I don't know where he's at with his injury, or he was off. I mean, he wasn't even suited up this week. Mm-hmm. So if he plays and he's the only guy, yeah.
Chris Thompson will still get the passing downs.
Yeah, Chris Thompson. That is true.
So, but maybe who knows? I mean, you never know. Like I said, if you just need a guy for next week, then go AP because he could. You never know when he's going to like turn back the clock and rush for 100 yards and a touchdown. And Murray's got to go up against the Rams, which are not a forgiving defense for that type of runner. So.
You might. I mean, for me, I think I might be swayed to go with Hyde because of schedule. Being on Houston, I'm not sure who they play.
They play Jacksonville next.
Yeah, they play Jacksonville. I mean, their division. If you're just looking at divisional games, it's not as hard as someone like who Latavius Murray is playing. So I don't know. Something to think about. I haven't looked at the schedule. Look at the schedule to see what you think. Also, he says Hawkinson or Waller? Hawkinson.
Yeah, I'd say I like Hawkinson for his upside. He's a little bit more of I think a high ceiling, high floor because he is a rookie and we don't know exactly, it could have been a fluke game. I don't think it was, but I mean, there's more of a high ceiling, high floor with him. Waller, we saw what Jared Cook did in Oakland last year. Gruden loves to throw to the tight end. Waller's been in the league for a few years. He's not going to be incredible. He's not going to be a top 5 tight end, but he's a guy that could be like the, 7-8 tight end. Whereas, Hawkinson, if he plays like he did yesterday, I mean, you could be talking about like
the next Gronk.
He could push for like a top 3 tight end finish. So for me, I take Hawkinson for the upside.
I agree. Hawkinson just skill wise is way better. Waller, he's good. He's great. I think he'd be a solid ad.
A backup, a great backup, or if you just
if you're streaming tight ends, like pick them up, man. Put them in there.
Yeah.
But by the way, are you buying this this Raiders team from last night?
No, I'll buy some of the players like Josh Jacobs. Jacobs looked good. But the Raiders have a tough schedule. They have a tough schedule. The Broncos were I don't know. The Broncos are just kind of off.
I think their defense is not definitely not what it was 2 years ago, and it's been depleted every year, and they haven't really done much to shore it up with younger guys.
No.
They're relying too much on these guys who were awesome 3 years ago.
Yeah. There was a stat about like how many players Elway had drafted, and like one of them had turned into a Pro Bowler or something, over the last, X number of picks. Now, he got Bradley Chubb last year, and
that's true.
Bradley Chubb's going to be a Pro Bowler, but that was kind of a can't miss pick, So, I think the situation in Denver is just going to end with John Elway getting the boot of it, and until it does, I don't think they're really going to start to, get better.
I agree. Speaking of Denver, Sanders or Jackson, man, me gets wins. You got some questions. I like it. keep them coming. So Emmanuel Sanders or D-Jax. Ooh, that's tough. They're kind of the same player, except Sanders, I think, is going to have a more established role. Him and Sutton are the only two guys in Denver as far as pass catchers.
That's true, but you've got Joe Flacco throwing to him as opposed to Carson Wentz.
That is true.
That is a tough one. Gosh, that is a tough one. So you're going with Sanders?
I'm going Sanders.
You're going Sanders. Man, that is a really tough one. That's a really tough one.
Flip a coin.
It really is just sort of a coin flip because, Cortland Sutton, he's the bigger wide receiver. I think he's going to get more of the, the red zone stuff if and when the Broncos get in the red zone. The fact that Jackson got, like 10 targets is a little bit, encouraging for me. So
he got him early and often, man.
Yeah.
I told you, right? Like I was texting you, I was like, I said, DJ's getting it. I think I said like Wentz is in love with D-Jax or something, man.
I'm gonna change I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna go with Emmanuel Sanders because Deshaun Jackson is gonna have the bigger like blow up games, the boom bust. He's gonna have bigger games than Sanders because he plays in a better offense and plays with a better quarterback. So if you are chasing points and you need a guy who might blow up for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, then I would say Jackson. If you're looking for something more consistent, then I would say Emmanuel Sanders because it really is. Yeah, it's him and Cortland Sutton in that passing game.
Yeah, and he brings up the fact that did you see? Can you see the chat? The Broncos
no.
Broncos are playing the Bears. He says.
Yeah.
Does that make a difference for you? Because I guess we're setting up his starting lineup here for next week, I guess.
Yeah. For 1 week, give me Deshaun Jackson. They're playing the Falcons. They're playing the Falcons.
That's a juicy matchup.
And I think Deshaun Jackson has always. I'd have to go back and look, but I think he's just always burned the Falcons. Because he was in Tampa, for some years, and I just remember it seems like him getting behind that Atlanta defense. But for 1 week, I mean, we saw what the Bears did to Green Bay last week. So that's Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and MVS and Jimmy Graham. So what are they going to do to Joe Flacco and Emmanuel Sanders? And for sure this week, Deshaun Jackson for me.
Yeah, I would actually be looking. Well, I mean, Sanders could be the little dump off pass, because that Flacco, man, if he loves anything, it's a check down to the slot. And I can't remember actually I didn't see was Sanders playing in the slot.
I do not remember if he was opposite Sutton or in the slot. I was kind of tuning into bits and pieces of that game. All my games were decided, so I didn't even I didn't really pay attention. No.
He says top 5 defenses to stream. Well, Dallas is always a good one. They're playing. Who is Dallas playing?
Dallas has got the Redskins. They're on the road. So
Dallas is on the road playing the Redskins. If you can pick up the Patriots, they're playing. I doubt the Patriots are on the waiver wire, but if they are, they're playing Miami. So
I picked up. I actually have the Patriots in several of my leagues because I picked them up and even played them against the Steelers some, because like I said, I just expected them to shut down the Steelers. So if the Patriots are available, but I think ones that are probably I'm just looking to see who all, like, what's the percentage of ones that are owned here.
Yeah, Green Bay would be a good one to pick up. Green Bay is going to be playing Minnesota.
They're going to host Minnesota. Yeah.
Yeah. They're playing at home. Their defense was thunderous. Actually, I think Green Bay probably my number one pickup. Them or Dallas, if Dallas hasn't been picked up yet.
Yeah. I would say I've seen Houston. I'm looking to see here what the ownage is here, the owning percentages on these teams. Because Houston hosts Jackson. Okay, Houston's only 53% owned in Yahoo leagues, and they host Jacksonville that's playing without, its quarterback. So I think Houston would be a top option for me. Yeah, New England, if they happen to be available. Some of these others are not going to be available.
Carolina is barely owned.
Yeah, Carolina's another one that I was going to mention because they host Tampa
Bay.
And then Tennessee is only 9% owned, and they shut down the Browns in Cleveland. Now, the Colts are a completely different team. The Browns don't have a good offensive line. Mm-hmm. The Colts are good at getting the ball out quickly, and they've got a good offensive line. So, that the Tennessee, how Tennessee matches up with them, I'm not sure, because it's going to be completely the opposite of the Browns. But Tennessee put up 23 points. Their defense put up 23 points. They allowed 13. They had a safety, 3 interceptions, a touchdown, 5 sacks. So that's a good team. And then
I think my final sneaky play while you're looking for that last one is Denver. I think Denver would be against Trubisky.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess maybe for my last one, I'm going to say actually I'm going to give you 2 that are just going to kind of throw these out here to see. Okay. So one would be Buffalo, because they're playing the Giants. And they were pretty good against the Jets. And so, we saw what Dallas did to the Giants. The other one would be, I know San Francisco they were the top scoring defense. They had 27 points, and granted they were playing against Jameis Winston. But they had 3 sacks, 3 interceptions, a fumble recovery, 2 touchdowns. So they're not going to get the Bucs every week, but they get the Bengals this week, and the Bengals, who may be without Joe Mixon and without AJ Green. So we saw that the 49ers could, play well on the road already. So I think if you're looking for one that could be a surprise pick, maybe roll with the 49ers again to see if that was for real or not.
Yeah. So that's more than 5. I think top 5 would probably be Green Bay, Carolina. Who'd you say? Tennessee. And how many is that? That's 4, right?
That's 3.
3. And then the 2, and then the last 2 you said, I think those are good. And then a sneaky play would be, I think,
Denver.
Yeah,
I can get on board with Denver. Yeah, Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah,
it was rough.
All right, man. Well, do you have any final? Thanks for all your questions. Me get wins.
Yeah,
Me like to get wins too.
me too.
And I see you got a picture of Rose. That's interesting. I'm in Chicago, so mixed feelings about Rose. But do you have any final thoughts, Jared, as we say adieu?
I don't know. Let's see. Any final thoughts that are worth throwing out there? Well, I mean, tonight's waiver wire, so I'm curious to see. I'm always curious to see what everybody's preference order is going to be in different leagues, because that can like vary wildly. And I've actually got I've got the number one priority in our league. And
I've got the number 2, I think.
Really? Oh, okay.
Maybe not.
I'm debating whether I even want to use it or not, because I've got a pretty solid team. And like, is there anybody out there? It's almost tougher to me when you've got the number 1 or number 2 waiver priority, because then I start thinking about it. Like, do I want to burn it? When you get farther down, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to get this guy or go after this guy, or one of these guys will be available at least. But when you're at 1, like, man, what if there's a big injury next week and like a running back goes down or somebody drops a really good player? And so that's always kind of tough.
Yeah. Sometimes, because I'll be honest, the priority waiver wire intimidates me. I haven't played many leagues with that. I know I usually play Fab up until this point. I've got 4 leagues this time that have some kind of priority, and I can't tell if it's if I use it, I lose it, or if it's just like every week somebody has a new one, or if you're the lowest, you get the highest or whatever.
No, the way it works is like whatever actually, if they're public leagues, I don't know if they're private leagues. I guess maybe, I don't know how much you can manipulate that, but if they're public leagues, the way it works is like, say you're at 1, you use yours, and then you go back to 10, and then
you work your way back up,
and then you work your way back up. Yeah. So whoever then in front of you
uses, I hate that. I like Fab way, way, way better.
Yeah.
So whenever I've been in these kind of leagues where they have it, I've always I just wake up at like 4 or 5 and watch and see who people drop, because to me that's way more interesting. Well,
yeah, but like that's true. That's true.
I mean, when I have a team like right now, like I don't know who I would drop. Like I'm looking at my roster. I'm like, especially in our league.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Yeah. There's like every league that I'm in, I can find like a spot, and sometimes like usually 2, but like sometimes it's just 1, sometimes 2, and then if it's really like, if I really don't like my bench, or if I've been in an auction league where I really just put a lot of money in on star players and didn't really draft a lot of depth, then I'm like, all right, 4 of you are getting cut,
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to pick up everybody that I can off the waiver wire. But I like a lot of my bench because of, just weird things that have happened that, like I said, even though I drafted a lot of like Wentz at quarterback or something, or some Baker, like I really believed in Dak in that first week. And so I picked up, Dak in several leagues. After the thing with Antonio Brown, I picked up Tyrell Williams in like 7 or 8 leagues.
Good call.
So some of the guys that I would have gotten, potentially are already on my roster. So I think this time, it's a little bit, there's not as much out there that's appealing to me as there normally would be, because most of those little straight line wide receivers I'm just not interested in. So I'm going to go after some of those tight ends, a couple of those tight ends. I'm going to go after, I think Malcolm Brown in some leagues. And then other than that, though, I'm going to pass on a lot of those other little receivers.
Yeah. And you got to have strategy too. It's like, next week could be It could be way weirder, and a lot more to pick up. This week doesn't seem. There's nobody who I'm like, gotta get him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like after 1 week, you don't know who's for real, and so after a second week, you're like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't so sure about this, but now they've done 2 weeks in a row, so maybe I'll go get that guy. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Oh, one last thing we didn't talk about. Your guy Mayfield. I heard Dr. Cho was saying like he's worried that there was a bandage around his thumb. He saw the bandage around his thumb and said, that's not normal. That's not good. That there was a bandage.
I'll have to check that out. I didn't see that. Yeah, that offensive line, man, I
thought it was going to be so much better. What everybody was saying, it was going to be like the next coming of. Oh, no. A lot of people were concerned about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, there again, I mean, the Browns are, it's just funny to see how teams just follow this model over and over. Like the Colts, they got Andrew Luck and they surrounded him with skill players and they were like, offensive line doesn't matter. And, and then the Texans, they got Deshaun Watson and then they got DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. Well, those Hopkins was already there, but, and then they're like, offensive line doesn't matter. And then, and then Deshaun Watson's getting slammed in the turf. And then now Baker Mayfield, Cleveland traded away. I'd forgotten this, but I guess they traded away their second best offensive lineman in the offseason. Yeah. And so, once again, it's like, so it's almost like they're getting those skill guys to like put people in seats. But like honestly, like the better formula in the NFL is to draft linemen.
Yeah.
And get value skill players, because like, Michael Gallup in Dallas, 3rd round pick, Michael Thomas in New Orleans, I think he was a 2nd round pick, these guys for the Colts, so it just doesn't pay. And so you would think that GMs would learn this lesson eventually, but doesn't. So, yeah. So Baker is one guy, there's a lot of these guys, like most of my guys, I was right on them. There's not a lot of guys that I was like, oh, that person didn't have a good week. And I was expecting them to, because I like with the Steelers, I expected them to not play well. Baker's the one that I'm like, I'm not so sure that this was, an aberration. I think as bad as that line is and with some of their schedule and stuff, I'm worried about Baker now.
Yeah, I'm actually I took so much Chubb. I'm worried about him.
I don't have that much stock. I've got him I think I have him on 3 teams. But yeah, looking at his schedule and that line and everything else, like I've been putting out a couple offers for like other star players because I don't know. I think he won't be terrible, but I don't know if he's gonna, really. I mean, he ended up, by the end of drafts, he was like ranked like 5, behind like the big 4 of Barkley, McCaffrey, Kamara, and Zeke. And then when I really started looking at his schedule and stuff, even prior to that week 1, I'm like, I shouldn't have took him that high. It's a little tougher than I thought.
Yeah, he's like one of those guys I just fell in love with, and I was just taking him because I was in love with him. I wasn't thinking about it rationally.
Yeah.
So, but I'm thinking about just wait. He's gonna have a big. Game.
He will.
And as soon as he does, I'm gonna sell high because it's hard though. Even talking about it, I'm like, no, don't do it. All right, man. Well, I gotta go.
All right.
Good talking to you, and good luck on the waiver wire.
Same to you.
We're going to be competing for that hockey. Oh, wait, I already have hockey. All right, brother. All right. Talk to you later.
All right. See ya.
Bye. Or I guess we're just